I'm Anthony Davis from 5 Minute News. After the catastrophic implosion of the OceanGate Titan submersible on June 18, 2023, killing all 5 souls on board, including Stockton Rush, the CEO and pilot of the sub, I've been thinking a lot about this submersible, about its design, and also about the desire of people that can afford $250,000 to actually go and see the wreck of Titanic. I've never really connected with the wreck so much, the idea that you would want to go down and look at this, mausoleum of history. To me, I like to think about the ship, in 1912 when it was shiny and brand new and people were excited about crossing the ocean and seeking a new life in the US. And it's that aspect of Titanic that interests me, and I look at photographs of the ship as it was before it sunk on that fateful night. And I've never really understood the desire to want to kind of go down and see it looking destroyed and sad, and obviously with the loss of 1,500 lives, that the ghosts of which are very much a part of that ship. And so when this Titan event happened, I thought long and hard about what to say about it and what to think about it. Well, Stockton Rush himself interests me very much. OceanGate, his company, is a privately owned company. They say it focused on increasing access to the deep ocean through innovation of the next generation of crewed submersibles and launch platforms, according to an archived version of the company's now wiped website. You can't actually get onto the OceanGate website anymore. The company has completed over 14 expeditions and over 200 dives in the Pacific, Atlantic, and Gulf of Mexico, according to the archived website. Well, let's take a look at some of the visuals of Titanic, because in previous dives, this one in 2022, Titan went down with like a small GoPro camera mounted in that perspex dome that was potentially, one of the parts of that submersible that failed under pressure. And we can see in high definition images of Titanic that you would have seen, I guess, if you went down there. The fact that they'd recorded this and it was available for anybody to watch in 4K suggests to me that, why pay all that money to be in this confined space, to sign a waiver, take a risk of your life when you could just watch it on YouTube? I just didn't get it. So I'll just explain a little bit more about the company while we look across the bow of Titanic and see some of the images that Titan previously captured, as new evidence continues to strongly suggest that OceanGate submersible, which catastrophically imploded and killed all 5 passengers on its way to the wreck of the Titanic, was unfit for the journey. Arnie Weissman, editor-in-chief of Travel Weekly, initially agreed to join the June expedition, but backed out at the last minute due to a scheduling conflict. A May dive he was supposed to go on was also cancelled due to bad weather. A conversation that he had with OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush the night before the expedition still haunts him to this day. According to Weissman, Rush had bought the carbon fiber used to make the Titan at a big discount from Boeing because it was past its shelf life for use in aeroplanes. In other words, Stockton Rush knew that the carbon fiber, which is a very poor choice of material for a deep-sea vessel, as many experts have pointed out, already potentially had flaws that could have played a role in the Titan's tragic demise. It's yet another indication that Rush and OceanGate cut alarming corners in the development of the sub. In fact, experts had been warning them for years that building such a vessel, while dismissing any efforts to have it qualified and tested by experts and regulators, was a very bad idea. Rob McCallum told OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush that he was potentially putting his clients at risk and urged him to stop using the sub until it had been certified by an independent agency. Mr. Rush responded that he was tired of industry players who try to use a safety argument to stop innovation. The tense exchange ended after OceanGate's lawyers threatened legal action. "I think you are potentially placing yourself and your clients in a dangerous dynamic," he wrote to the OceanGate boss in March 2018. "In your race to Titanic, you are mirroring that famous catch cry, 'She is unsinkable.'" In March 2018, after one of the international industry group's annual conferences, a letter was drafted to OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush, the pilot of the vessel, expressing unanimous concern on behalf of its members about the development of the Titan and its planned Titanic expeditions. They said, "Our apprehension is that the current experimental approach adopted by OceanGate could result in negative outcomes, from minor to catastrophic, that would have serious consequences for everyone in the industry." The Titan made its first dive to the Titanic wreck site in 2021 and returned the following year, though those trips haven't been without issue. OceanGate acknowledged in legal filings that the vessel had encountered a battery issue and some external damage during its maiden voyage. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police said it's looking into whether criminal, federal, or provincial laws may possibly have been broken. The announcement comes amid mounting questions about the Titan's design, including the account of a submersible expert who said he warned the vessel's CEO about safety concerns after a trip years ago. Remember, Stockton Rush took advantage of the fact that the Titanic wreck is in international waters, and so there is no legal jurisdiction in that area. The other thing that really interested me is that in addition to this 4K footage that enables you to see up close what Titanic looks like right now, another company has actually been down there and photographed it in 3D. In fact, the first full-sized digital scan of the Titanic, which lies 12,500 feet down in the Atlantic, has been created using deep-sea mapping. It provides a unique 3D view of the entire ship, enabling it to be seen if the water had been drained away. The hope is that this will shed new light on exactly what happened to the liner, which sank in 1912. The Titanic has been extensively explored since the wreck was discovered in 1985, but it's so huge that in the gloom of the deep, cameras can only ever show us tantalizing snapshots of the decaying ship, and never the whole thing. Well, this new scan captures the wreck in its entirety, revealing a complete view of the Titanic. It lies in two parts, with the bow and stern separated by around 2,500 feet. A huge debris field surrounds the broken vessel. The scan was carried out in the summer of 2022 by Magellan Limited, a deep-sea mapping company, and Atlantic Productions, who are making a documentary about the project. Submersibles, remotely controlled by a team on board a specialist ship, spent more than 200 hours surveying the length and breadth of the wreck. They took more than 700,000 images from every angle, creating an exact 3D reconstruction, which suggests that in addition to the excellent video footage that you are watching, you can also access a 3D mapped image that you can move in and out and around so that you can study Titanic. My point is that now we have available to us on land better quality visuals than you would get diving down to the site of Titanic and looking through a small plexiglass window. Which brings us full circle and suggests to me that what Stockton Rush was trying to do was a commercial entity. He decided that he'd found a way of creating a cheap submersible, because of course regulated and authorized submersible machines are not cheap. This was made on the cheap. He was getting around $250,000 per passenger, taking 4 people down with him, and he was going to get away with this for as long as possible. Unfortunately, the elements, the physics, and the deep North Atlantic took him, the vessel, and his 4 passengers in a catastrophic implosion, killing them all instantly. In the days before their deaths, the divers attended safety meetings and presentations on board the submersible's mothership, the Polar Prince, a former Canadian Coast Guard icebreaker that was built in 1959. The 5 people who died were told to eat a low-residue diet the day before the dive and not to drink coffee that morning. They were also asked to load their favourite songs on their phone to play on a Bluetooth speaker, but Mr. Rush insisted no country music be included. Divers were told to wear thick socks and a hat, as it would get colder the deeper the submersible went. The 5 were also warned to avoid getting their feet wet from condensation that would form on the floor. During the dive, the victims would have only seen bioluminescent sea creatures through the 21-inch porthole on the way down to the Titanic wreck, as the floodlights were turned off until the submersible reached the seabed to save battery. Stockton Rush, the pilot, usually sat at the back of the submersible away from the porthole. The others sat with their backs to the curved walls of the Titan submersible. The submersible typically descended at about 25 meters per minute, so that those on board would feel no sense of motion. More Titan missions were aborted than were accomplished. The first 4 OceanGate dives in 2023 did not reach the Titanic. There were extensive safety concerns, with several submersible experts flagging issues. During a Titan mission in 2021, divers had to move their weight from side to side to dislodge weights attached to the submersible, which would result in the vessel coming back to the surface while a dive was aborted. Several investigations into the implosion are underway after pieces of debris were found 487 meters from the Titanic 5 days after the vessel lost contact. It was reported that OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush used university interns to design the electrical system for the doomed Titan submarine. 61-year-old Stockton Rush, who allegedly ignored safety warnings, used students from Washington State University to work on the critical systems, according to a new report. Mr. Rush, the French Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet, 58-year-old British billionaire adventurer Hamish Harding, Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman all died after the vessel suffered a catastrophic implosion. An hour and 45 minutes into the voyage to Titanic's wreckage, contact with the sub was lost, and despite a huge effort to find the 5 missing passengers, parts of the vessel were found on the 22nd of June, along with presumed human remains. We're now approaching the expansion joint, and we can see the remains of the Marconi room, the wireless radio room that sent Morse code messages back to other ships, the Carpathia, and also prioritized messages to loved ones that were sent prior to the ship hitting the iceberg. Hence, the ice warnings weren't heeded, as first-class passengers were prioritized over the essential information regarding the weather. We're now approaching the remains, the open void of the Grand Staircase, famous in the James Cameron Titanic movie as the place where Jack and Rose met at the clock at the top of the stairs. There is nothing remaining of the Grand Staircase in this central void of Titanic, as it was all destroyed in the sinking. The entrance on the right is the first-class entranceway to the Grand Staircase. This area we're approaching is the reading and writing area and the first-class lounge. And the void to the left is where the second funnel would have stood, linking the smokestack with boiler room number 2. We're now at the part of the ship that broke apart, separating the bow and middle section with the rear section, which bobbed and floated away separately. And as we look inside that middle part of the ship, you can actually make out one of the boilers from the boiler room, where coal would have been put in through the door, and the remains of that ornate door are quite clear to see in these images. We're now back at the grand staircase, and if you look very carefully, you can see two hanging chandeliers. Now travelling along the port side, heading back towards the bow, where you can see one of two remaining lifeboat davits hanging out over the side of the ship, hanging in the darkness, reminding us of the great tragedy that occurred. Now, to the right-hand side of the ship, you can see the cabin windows on B deck. As the camera pans across this area of the bow, you can get a sense of the rivets, an estimated 3 million rivets that held the ship together. Thank you for watching this OceanGate Titan submersible footage with me that was shot in 2022, the last successful mission of the Titan to Titanic before the disaster that happened in June 2023. I'd like to dedicate this video to the 5 souls lost on board the Titan. I don't intend to apportion blame to any single person for this incident, because I recognize that amongst humanity we need intrepid explorers. We need people like Stockton Rush, who are few and far between, people who actually want to push the envelope of exploration and discovery, which is a natural part of the human condition. I just wish that he had done it on his own and not taken civilians or paying passengers, and I wish he hadn't turned this into a commercial enterprise, because it's okay if you want to take risks and take your own life in that risk, as many explorers have done, climbing Everest or doing daredevil stunts, because you're only responsible for yourself. The difference this time was that Stockton Rush took regular people, took their money, and involved them in a dive in a wholly unsuitable vessel that was not certified and was a huge risk. And those 4 passengers put their trust in him, and he convinced them that he and his vessel were trustworthy. But he also made them sign a waiver that prevented them or their families from suing him in the event of an unfortunate disaster. I'm Anthony Davis. You can hear me every day on the 5 Minute News podcast here on YouTube or wherever you get yours.